sense of self is often affected after brain injury. And today we are talking all about these identity shifts, both for survivors and families, why they may happen, what could be going on beneath the surface, and how to move forward with a renewed sense of identity post brain injury. There is always hope, and you are not alone. Hi, I'm Cristabelle Braden, and this is my brain injury podcast, Hope Survives. This is an uplifting podcast to bring hope to your darkest days. As a survivor of traumatic brain injury and multiple concussions and re-injuries, I know what it's like to struggle to find hope. I don't want anyone to feel as alone as I did, and that's why over 10 years ago, I started an online community called Hope After Head Injury, which has now launched into a nonprofit organization called Hope Survives. Hope Survives envisions a world in which every survivor of brain injury and every member of their family are seen, loved, heard, valued, supported, uplifted, and never alone. This podcast is an extension of that, and I'd love to invite you to join along as we explore the realities of life with brain injury, with messages of encouragement, interviews with doctors and professionals, and survivor and family stories. No matter where you're at on your journey, there is always hope. With a little hope, you can make it through today. With a little faith, someday you'll get through the pain. Just a little love is enough to light the way through your darkest night. Hope survives. A little faith, a little love. Hope survives. Hey friends, welcome back to Hope Survives podcast. I'm your host, Cristabelle. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I am a survivor of brain injury, and over the years living with my TBI, I have gone through a lot of different stages of learning how to cope with it. It obviously led me to starting this podcast and eventually to founding Hope Survives, our nonprofit for brain injury. But I think more than anything, one of the biggest struggles through brain injury has been the identity piece. Suddenly you feel different. You might look the same on the outside or it's invisible, or maybe you notice some subtle changes in how you look. I know for me, like one side of my body got weaker and I could see it in my facial expressions. I just did not feel like me. Changes in abilities, changes in relationships. It just can be really overwhelming. And in the last couple episodes, we were talking about grief and ambiguous loss. And this conversation, I think, is kind of tied into that, or maybe the next step of let's talk about our identity and how do we reconnect with ourselves post brain injury. And for families, how do you reconnect as a family? For family members, you're affected as well. And so we're going to be addressing all of these points in today's conversation with Bethany Lewis. Bethany Lewis is a neurological occupational therapist, a certified life coach, and she has combined her passions of occupational therapy, brain health, and mental and emotional well-being into a concussion coaching program where she helps people suffering from post-concussion symptoms and their caregivers to navigate recovery and gain control over their lives again. She also has a podcast called The Concussion Coach that I was a guest on just a few months ago. So I'm so glad to have her here today to be able to have this really important conversation on identity. It is natural to feel defined by your TBI. I mean, I always say your brain injury doesn't define you, but the reality is a lot of times we feel like it does. We can say one thing and say, my brain injury doesn't define me. I'm more than my brain injury. We can say those things and we can even believe them to be true in our head. But a lot of times maybe what we think is true in our head doesn't always match how we feel, doesn't always match our experience. And it can take time and it can take some intentional processing to be able to come to a place where I can really say, I am more than my brain injury. These struggles have shaped me, but they don't define me. These struggles are not who I am. My brain injury is not who I am at my core. Now, it has affected pretty much every part of my life. And for a long time, I did feel like it defined me. And that's actually why I wrote a song called More to Me many years back, about how I'm more than my brain injury. But it's so hard in the moment when you are just every day struggling to be able to actually believe it. And so my encouragement, if you're a survivor listening today, is that if you felt this way, please give yourself grace. Don't be hard on yourself. It's natural to feel that way. It's common. It's going to happen. But do yourself the service and give yourself the opportunity to process it. We've created some journaling prompts on hopesurvives.org on identity after injury, for you to be able to process through if journaling is your thing. We also have created a resource called Family Identity After Injury for family members to kind of help them know what to expect, whether you just had your injury or whether you've been going through it, to kind of talk about how family dynamics shift and how things just feel different, because your family has like an identity at its core as well that gets shaken up. And so we could probably talk about this for a year on the podcast, but I hope that today's conversation is encouraging and helps you to see that you're not alone. And if you're a professional listening, helps you to help those that you're working with brain injury. If you're a friend of somebody who's had an injury, so glad you're listening. If you've had the injury yourself, if you're a family member, we want you to know you're here, you're in the right place, you're not alone. At Hope Survives, we've just started some new support groups. We have Hope for Family group for family members, Hope for couples navigating brain injury together. We have a new group called Found Connection for survivors who do not have a support system. And we also have the Hope After Head Injury groups that meet twice a month about brain injury symptoms just generally, and Renewed by Faith, which is our faith-based brain injury group, as well as a brain injury Bible study that's happening right now that we're hoping to do more of. There's a lot of other great things happening, so you can check all that out at hopesurvives.org. But before we move into the interview, I want to thank our sponsor, the Functional Neurology Center. The FNC's personalized neuro recovery programs offer hope for those suffering from brain injuries, dysautonomia, vestibular chronic pain, stroke, movement dysfunction, developmental disorders, PPPD, FND, and complex post-concussion. We are so grateful for the FNC support of our podcast, and we're just so grateful for all of your support and being part of the Hope Survives community. We want you to know you're not alone. We want you to know there's hope. We want you to know you're seen. We want you to know you're loved. We want you to know you're valued, you're understood, and we hope that you'll connect deeper with our community. We have some programs coming up this summer. You can check all that out on our website. And most of all, whatever brought you to listen to this, I want to encourage you that it takes bravery to take that step to listen to a podcast about something that you're going through. Maybe you're listening like, I don't know what I'm going to hear. I hope it's helpful. You know, you could be listening from whatever standpoint you're coming from. I just want you to know that there are people out there that get it, and going through brain injury is hard, but you don't have to face it alone. So thanks for listening. And without further ado, let's get into today's podcast. Well, today I am so excited to welcome Bethany Lewis here on Hope Survives podcast. Bethany had me on her podcast just a couple months ago. She has a wait. Is it called The Concussion Coach, or what's your podcast called?
Yeah, it's called The Concussion
Coach.
Okay.
I had like a brain moment of like, wait, I know that's what her website's called, but is that actually what the podcast name is? But yes, The Concussion Coach. So I was on your podcast and I'm so excited to have you here on Hope Survives podcast to talk about identity. Thank you so much for being willing to join us.
Yes, thank you. I'm so excited to be here and grateful to be talking about this. I think it's a really important topic, so I'm excited.
Thank you so much. So, before we get into the topic, can you just share a little bit of your experience working with brain injury and kind of what brings you here?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have been an occupational therapist for 16 years, almost 16 years, and I've been working with the brain injury, specifically concussion populations, for 8 years. When I first started working, in a concussion clinic, I was just astounded at hearing all of the stories that had similar themes running through them of people trying to get help and not getting quality help and not finding answers to their questions and dealing with so much. Before working, I worked at a place called Cognitive FX, and I was just astounded at how much a concussion could like turn someone's life upside down. And I didn't know that at all until I was interacting with lots of people who were coming through that program. And I saw them make changes and find healing, and it was astounding that nobody knew that healing was possible. It seemed like it was a brand new thing for them. And so it was really I just got really passionate about wanting to get quality information out there for people and help people to know that there is hope for recovery after a brain injury, because um, the hope piece is so important and hard to hold on to sometimes, I think.
Yeah. And well, that's really what we're called, right? Hope Survives. That's why, because it is hard to find hope in it. And yeah, thank you. So, what actually led you to working with concussion, if I might ask?
Yeah, no, you're good. I was working at a skilled nursing facility. And there was a guy there who would come in. Sometimes he's another occupational therapist who would come and do like PRN. So he would like kind of substitute if somebody else was out. And every time he would come, I would get so excited to chat with him because he had told me about this brain clinic that he worked at. And it was fascinating, the things that they were doing. And I was really excited to hear about it. And so when I had the opportunity to work there, I jumped into it, and it was just, yeah, I was excited about the idea of neuroplasticity and how the brain can change and the things that are possible. And so that's kind of how I got into that. And then I just, yeah, fell in love with all the people who are dealing with this, and just there's so much to it. And there's just, yeah, I really love this population and helping with all of like it's so occupational therapy is very holistic. We look at the whole person, and I feel like this injury impacts everything about a person. And so it's exciting to see how we can help and see changes um, being made. So that's kind of how I got into concussion space specifically. And then I got into, so I've been doing the occupational therapy. Then I got into life coaching, and really fell in love with how powerful our thoughts are and the mindset piece of things. And I feel like the emotional, mental component, and then later I've learned more about the nervous system component as well. Of all of those play into the healing of the physical so clearly and so dramatically. And so I feel like combining all of those things is really important in helping people speed up their recovery and navigate their journey. So that's kind of where I'm at. I really love doing what I do, and so inspired by the people that I get to work with and that I've seen. There's so much resilience and just faith and hope, and it's really impactful for me in my life, and I'm very grateful.
That's great. Thank you for sharing. I love how you mentioned the whole person, right? Like a brain injury affects every part of the person. And I feel like the general society's view of brain injury, TBI, concussion, even any other type of brain injury is the cognitive piece. But you can't really have the cognitive piece without also having the emotional piece and the mental health piece and the way that everything kind of intersects the emotions and we've been talking about grief and ambiguous loss on the podcast last month, and how we have to go through a grieving process. So, one of the first steps is kind of acknowledging that it is grief, or that you allowing yourself to feel and experience that. And then I think the next kind of logical step is towards, okay, but identity, like, who am I? What's going on? Who am I now? Right. So we're going to be talking about identity after injury today. And the first question I have for you is, why do you think this conversation matters? Why should we even talk about identity when it comes to brain injury?
That's such a good question. And again, such a good topic. And I think that's because identity is just core and foundational to our sense of well-being and confidence. Knowing who we are and what centers us is kind of like those first building blocks of knowing how we operate and how we want to show up in the world. And when a brain injury happens, that the rug can feel like it's just being completely pulled out from under you in relation to everything, and including your identity. I think it's such an important topic because it gets challenged, the sense of identity, who you are, what even life is after an injury like this. It's really important.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I completely agree. I think that metaphor of feeling like the rug's pulled out from under you is a really good one. It's disorienting.
Mm-hmm.
Not only the emotional and cognitive piece, but like sometimes there's the physical side. Like for me, when my balance and my proprioceptive system were affected, not knowing where your body is in space, like walking into walls, like going from being an athlete and a dancer and really coordinated before my brain injury, I didn't think twice about hopping on a bike or going to dance class and, skiing with my dad. And after the brain injury, it's like walking upstairs became this like huge challenge, right? So it's like so many things can just shift so quickly. And so, for me, in my experience, a lot of it came from changes in abilities when it comes to like the symptoms specifically. I've never really had a headache before the brain injury, so like having symptoms, but there's so many aspects to it. So how would you describe identity changes after a brain injury based on your experience working with those who've sustained injuries?
Yeah. I One of the things that you said, I think, is an important thing to pull out, which is that everything changed so quickly. I was mentioning this topic to my husband last night, and he made a comment that I think is really good. He said that it's like we're always changing, our identities are shifting, like as humans, as we're growing, as life, we're developing, we're maturing, our interests change, things change naturally. But it's the speed of the change with this, and maybe the direction. Like we're not expecting it, we're not looking forward for it, and all of a sudden these changes are happening so fast, and it's that change when you're not expecting it or not used to it, and that speed of it.
That's such a good point, because it's not gradual. For anyone who their identity changes, there's like a gradual shift of like, well, nobody's who they were 5 years ago. But with a brain injury, it's like, yeah, but it happened all at once, not over the course of 5 years.
Exactly. And I think too, like, speaking of gradual things, sometimes the symptoms can come on gradually, and so it's like you're not it happens suddenly and gradually at the same, like, also it's like it continues to change, and again, ways that you're maybe not excited about. So it does, those things shift and change. And I think something important to point out as well is just that, as I've done the coaching thing and really like thought about, if we dig down deep into the root cause of the problems that people experience, almost any problem, if you dig down deep enough, it, like, the source of it is a questioning of whether you belong, whether you are worthy of love and acceptance, and if you're good enough, right? That's that core foundational, like, identity is being questioned, and that's challenge for everything and anybody. And so I think when, again, with these, all of a sudden, all of the roles and the responsibilities that you're used to and the things you can do, and it, like, that you don't even think about, like you're saying, like I would jump on a bike or do whatever, and all of a sudden you can't do those things. Like it cuts deeply and quickly to that core questioning of identity and like, am I good enough? What if I can't do these things? What good am I? That like, and it breaks my heart to think that, but I think that is where people go, and it's understandable because we place so much of our self-worth on what we can do, what we've accomplished, what I am this. We have this list of roles and responsibilities and things that we do that give us our, we think give us our value and our meaning, but those things can change and can be taken away, like we said, in this kind of incident or accident. And so just understanding that is at stake is important, I think. And as far as the things that change with a brain injury, like that, the personality changes can happen. There's the mental health concerns that you may or may not have had before. If you did, sometimes they're like worse than they were. Sometimes people are dealing with depression, anxiety that they've never experienced before, irritability. I had a friend tell me that her teenagers, she had 2 teenagers who had brain injuries, and she felt like they were regressing to like toddlerhood all of a sudden. Like, what's going on? My teenagers having a tantrum like they did 8 years ago, right? So those personality changes, the anger outbursts, not having a filter, those kinds of things can shift, as well as, like you were mentioning, the symptoms that come up. Those symptoms prevent social interaction like you're used to having, not being able to go and do things and interact with people like you used to. Work challenges can be huge, like you can't think as clearly, or you're overstimulated when you're in that environment or whatever. Like the work can be challenging or impossible sometimes. It puts stress on relationships. Those symptoms make it so sometimes parents can't tolerate being around their own kids. Like, it's just, travel is really challenging. Like you were mentioning, like getting on a bus or whatever, like people travel, like small travel just to and from work, but even like, or, if people had found a lot of meaning in going and seeing new places or traveling with family, like those things can be completely different and maybe impossible. Sorry, I have this whole list of are you okay to me
No,
keep
this is
going, or do you have
great.
okay.
This is great. I think I'll just interject real quick. I really like that you have brought up that our identity is often impacted by what we can and can't do, because we generally tend to define ourselves by the things we do or have accomplished, and they're things that take time or that you work towards. And whether it's like a job or a title or grades, like I was in school when my brain injury happened, and I went from honors AP classes to special ed, right? Like that's an identity shift of like, I had never been in the regular classes. Like, I don't want to be rude about that, but it's like growing
Yeah.
up, I was always the advanced honors classes. And suddenly I'm in classes with a whole different set of kids, right? So it's like, it's just a totally different experience when you cannot function or interact with the world the same way as before. So I thought that was a good point. And I also really appreciated you sharing that it also happens gradually in addition to immediately. Something I've experienced over the years of like setbacks and things like that is like what I could do last week, I can't always do this week. Or if I'm having a good brain day, so to say, what I can do on that day isn't what I can do today. And we run into this fundamental issue if we're viewing our identity and what we can do or what we've accomplished when we cannot consistently show up that way. We run into a fundamental issue of, well, who am I? Right.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I just thought those were really good points.
Thank you. Yeah. And I think that's such an important, I appreciate that you brought that out, that it's like, it's inconsistent. Like sometimes we can do it, sometimes we can't. And then we question ourselves, like, am I crazy? Am I lazy all of a sudden? And what are other people going to think? They're not going to understand why I can't do it. I don't even understand why I can't do it today. Like yes, definitely such a good point. And I want to share an analogy that my friend, she's a speech therapist who's worked with people with traumatic brain injuries, shares. And I think it's a really good one. She talks about like, it's like we're pushing a shopping cart, and in it we have all of our roles and responsibilities and the things that we do, and that we place our value on. And with a brain injury, it's like that shopping cart just gets overturned, everything goes spilling out, and then we're like, I'm empty, I have nothing, who am I? But really, like, we're the ones pushing the cart. Like, you're still there, you're still you, you're still worthy and wonderful and worth fighting for, but it might look different. And when we put things back in, it might end up looking different as well. But that's okay. Like, I don't know, sometimes might not feel okay, but it's just different, and we tend to not like different a lot of times. But
Yeah.
sometimes things can be even better. I don't know. It's just there's a lot to it for sure. But yes, I like that analogy of like, oh, I thought these things were what would define me, but I'm actually the one pushing the cart. So I think that's a good analogy there.
Yeah, that's really good. And the point about different, that's a lot of what we talked about in our conversations previously on the podcast on ambiguous losses. Like, there's no closure when it comes to the loss that comes with brain injury, and things feel unfamiliar, but you're still you're still kind of you, but you don't feel like you don't act like you. And it's like, how do you, every single interaction in the world has been affected by this. So I'd love for you to continue down your list of things that identity changes and things that have affected. But I appreciate this segue here.
Good. Me too. I love it. I think, well, and you kind of going off of what you were just mentioning, like, you don't feel like you, that's something that happens a lot, that I hear a lot, is this depersonalization or dissociation. Like, people talk about feeling like they don't even know, they don't feel like themselves, they don't feel like they're even in their body. It's like an out of body experience kind of thing, and just like literally not feeling like themselves. And so that's very disorienting. And also, people sometimes talk about, well, and also kind of along those lines, not, sometimes people don't even have the same interests or the same taste in food or taste, like, it's just like things are completely different, like, and that again can be confusing for them and also for the people around them. Like, oh wait, I thought you loved this restaurant. Like, all of a sudden you can't stand it.
Yeah, that was me. My sense of smell and taste got affected significantly.
Yeah, it's very disorienting. It changes, it can change so much, and again, all at once. And one other thing that I think is worth mentioning, that I first heard about this when I read The Ghost in My Brain. I don't know if you've read that book or not, but he talks about, he didn't have a specific religion, I don't think, but he had a relation. He felt like he had a relationship with God growing up. He like prayed and felt a closeness to God, and then after his brain injury, he felt like that was completely gone. And I know some people, and I've talked to other people since, some people have felt like a distance from God, and some people felt like he's super even closer. And I think in the people who felt the distance from God still believed that he was there, and it, like, they can see his hand in it, but they didn't feel it necessarily. And I think that's again just a point to bring out, that can feel like a bit of an identity shift too. Is like, wait, this my relationship with divinity is now changed, and like, again, who am I? Because if that's not there, then what is happening? And the author, I don't remember his name, of The Ghost in My Brain, I love the point that he made when he talked about like, he did find healing and was able to get to a point where he felt God again. And he talked about like researching that and finding that there was an area of the brain that gets lit up when people are having spiritual experiences and specific things. And he was like, some people might look at that and say that's evidence that God and spirituality is just all in our heads. It's like, it's just a part of our brain. But he was like, if that would be a similar thing, would be to say, like, if something in your brain is not working properly, so you don't hear or interpret sound, like, if you can't hear things, that doesn't mean that there's not sound in the world. And if our brain is injured in a place that we can't feel things that we used to, that doesn't mean that God isn't there, or that there's not a higher power like directing things. So anyway, I thought that was a beautiful analogy, but also like a way to something to bring up because sometimes that can be impactful for people, and affect their feeling of identity. So that's kind of the list of things as I was brainstorming some of the things that ways that people find their identity shifting following brain injury. Um,
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. And it's really interesting to hear your experience and your understanding of it being a professional that works with brain injury because, we talk to a lot of people who've had brain injuries, and I think the biggest thing is we feel misunderstood, right? So to like hear you explain all those things is like really encouraging to hear that there are reasons you guys might be feeling these ways, right? Because it's so hard to put into words and it's so hard to describe and it's so hard to say, I just don't feel like me. And then they're like, people are like, but you are you. Just like find your authentic self and just like be you or find something, and there is value in finding things that bring you joy and in like rediscovering yourself, but there also needs to be a process of acknowledgement for what's happened. So I want to take a little bit of a shift here, and I want to talk about the family before we continue talking about the survivors specifically. But we have family members that listen to our podcast, and part of our mission statement for Hope Survives is for every survivor and for every member of their family to be seen and loved and understood. And a big part of our mission is to serve the entire family. And so I want to take a moment to talk about the family. Number one, what are things for family members to look for in their survivor when it comes to identity? So, like, how can a family member help their loved one or a friend, a loved one, help their person with brain injury when it comes to identity? And number two, what are things for a family member or a loved one of an individual with a brain injury to look for in themselves? Because that person's identity could be affected as well.
yeah, I think that's such a good question and important topic, because again, I think for the loved ones, it's so challenging because there's so many changes all at once, and I think it's really important and I maybe we'll get into more of like to-dos or like tips or like ways to help, but just to be aware that it's okay that you're feeling the way that you're feeling, and to allow yourself, both as the survivor and the loved one, to grieve the loss. And I know you just recently had conversations about grief, and I do think that is so important, like to acknowledge it, and to recognize that things are different, and it's okay to be sad about that. And I think those are, again, as family members or loved ones, to look for in their survivor, to just be aware of, that everything is upside down for them, and like, sometimes people feel like, especially at the beginning, maybe, I think with a big incident like this, it can feel like everything's disoriented, everything is so crazy, and then you're like, well, it's okay that it's like that. I think sometimes people are willing to give some grace at the beginning, especially just because we're like adjusting, but then we expect to adjust and like come out of it and be fine again. And if somebody ends up having post-concussion syndrome or symptoms or whatever we're calling it these days, then that feels like it's not changing, it's not going to get better, and that's sometimes when it can be particularly challenging. So be aware of that, like as you're adjusting, as you're figuring things out, it's a roller coaster, there's ups and downs along the whole journey. And so I think recognizing that in your loved one, and recognizing that for yourself, like, again, it's okay to feel whatever you're feeling, it's valid, it's understandable, and sometimes the best way through it is through it. It's not, there's not really ways to get around it necessarily, the feelings and the emotions that come up, we just need to process them. But and again, I think knowing and just recognizing, or like letting it be known for yourself, like this isn't what you signed up for. It's understandable that this is so hard, because you're, as a spouse, maybe you weren't wanting to be your spouse's parent or like caregiver. Like that's not the relationship that usually people envision when they make a partnership like that. Or parents of teens, again, they might feel like all of a sudden they've got a younger kid again. So recognize it, that if that's how you're feeling, acknowledge it. Like it's okay that you're feeling that way. It's understandable. And sometimes we tend to try to push away, like, oh, I shouldn't think that. I shouldn't have, like, that is a bad thing for me to think, that I don't want to do this. Of course I want to do this. I love them. You know, like people can get into that. And I think what we resist persists. If we're like, nope, I can't think that, I'm not allowed to have those kinds of experiences, then it just like it's like wanting to tell us that like our whatever it is like, I need you to be aware of this, like acknowledge it, like let it come to the front of your mind and say, okay, this is what I'm having, my experiences, these are the thoughts that I'm having. And sometimes even just like letting those out, journaling it, talking to somebody about it, that can be enough to ease it and lighten it and let you move on. But again, I just think the awareness of what they're dealing with and awareness of what you're dealing with really is important. And recognizing, for the caregiver, recognizing that their needs are important too and need to be met, and that their loved one may not be the one to meet those needs right now, but those needs still are important. And like you need to get the me time or the help that you need, and you might need to get that from other sources, and that's okay. And again, it's a season. Like there is hope for improvement and change and growth. And even if it takes a really long time, or if it doesn't change in the way that we hope, in the time that we hope, you need to be taking care of yourself in the meantime. And if there, for the caregiver, just another message, if you're feeling resentment, that is a really good cue to take a step back. It means that you're not getting your needs met, and feeling like you have to do all of these things. If you feel like you don't have a choice and you're like suffocated or whatever, like that's because there's some unneed met that you're not getting met, some need that is unmet in you that you need to work towards meeting, and it may not be met by the person that you love, and that's okay. Like you're both going through a lot right now. You're both good humans experiencing a really hard thing together. So those are some of my thoughts. I don't know if those make sense or if you have thoughts on those thoughts, but that's kind of what I was thinking about when I saw that question of like, what is how to help people when they're, or like how the loved ones can be aware of what their loved one is dealing with as well as themselves. So
yeah, thank you. I love the reminder that you could have some unmet needs. Like that's, I think, hard for family. I can only imagine because I'm a brain injury survivor, right? But I can only imagine how hard it could feel to even think those thoughts, because I know, at least for like my family and my mom specifically, she put aside her own needs so much, not just for me, also for my sisters and my dad and everyone. You know, she was just doing everything she could to keep the family together and to take care of everyone, that she allowed, you know, her own needs to not be met. And as I have healed in my own way from my brain injury and grown, we've been able to have conversations where she's like discovering new things about herself that, you know, for a long time wasn't really able to. And I think, you know, she shared some of this in when she was on the podcast a couple of weeks ago, actually. But I think if I could encourage the family members, like being able to allow yourself to think the things that you think maybe you shouldn't be feeling or thinking, like let them come out, because if you just push it down, that's not helpful for anyone. And that your identity matters too, and your grief matters too, right? Because everything feels like it becomes about the survivor, but realizing it's about all of you, you're all affected. So I would love to continue this conversation towards this concept of being defined by your brain injury. Now, you know, there's been conversations about how, you know, we're not defined by our brain injuries. And that's something I started saying like like 10 years ago, I wrote a song called More to Me, how there's more than my brain injury. And, it's something that I've talked about a lot, but the flip side of that is we can't just skip to that. We can't just skip to, well, I'm not defined by my brain injury. Like, let's talk about why people feel that way. It's natural to feel defined by your brain injury when your whole life becomes managing symptoms, medications, doctor's visits, therapies, figuring out the maze. Maybe, every day you're reminded because you can't work the same job you did. Your life is different. You can't, like you said, you can't travel or do the things you used to do. And so, how can we contextualize this feeling defined by brain injury? And then after that, first I want to talk about why we feel that way. And then I want to give people grace and permission to feel that way, at least for a little bit, before we can move forward. Now, how can you find your sense of self and identity even when your life feels overcome by the brain injury? So, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's such good points. And I think I like that you said that it's it's natural, like it's understandable. And because of, like you said, like everything's impacted by it. And so it makes sense that that would be like, that's where our minds are. It is what we are right now or whatever. But I think so it makes sense. And I think, like you said, if that's where we need to be for a minute, that's okay. I think um, long term, though, it is important to remember that we're not our diagnosis. We're not our thoughts. We're not our emotions. We are not those things. And the language that we use matters. I have a friend who had a brain tumor, and she was very careful and intentional about not calling it my cancer or my tumor. It was like I don't, she would separate it from herself. And when she, and so I think, like, you acknowledge it, it's there, it's happening, it's impacting things. But having that language to separate it a little bit might be helpful, just to be like the brain injury that I am dealing with, like, rather than my brain injury. I think just that shift in and of itself could be powerful. And I think deciding how you want to think about it, like taking some time to acknowledge what it is and how it's impacting you, and what you like, kind of taking charge of how you want to feel about it. Like, what do I want? How do I want to think about it? How do I want to talk about it? And just being, again, intentional. That the awareness and intentionality really makes a huge difference. So I think um, that could be a helpful way to think about it. Um, and then finding, you asked about finding your sense of identity afterwards, right? um, I think this also is a choice. It's a decision to make. Like, choose what you want to believe about who you are and practice that. um, our beliefs are thoughts that we've practiced so much that they're habitual and we don't even question them, basically. And so we can, and sometimes we pick up beliefs along the way. Like, somebody said I wasn't a good drawer when I was 5, and so I that's me. Like, I say that as a belief about myself, a fact that I just don't even question. But it's worth questioning. Like, we can say, okay, well, maybe that was that person's opinion then, but that doesn't necessarily define me. Again, so we want to just be aware of, and it can be helpful to talk through this with somebody or journal it out. Again, like, increasing your awareness of what your beliefs are about yourself. And then deciding, like, kind of intentionally picking and choosing the things that you want to keep that serve you and help you show up as the person you want to be. And intentionally, like, letting go of the things that are not helping you to be who you want to be. So again, we have so much more power over ourselves than we sometimes give ourselves credit for. And choosing how we want to think and believe about ourselves will make a huge difference.
I love
And
that. Sorry, did you have something else to add?
no,
Oh,
I just
okay.
think it's well, I mean, I have other thoughts, but yeah, I
Yeah.
would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah. Oh, I'm just kind of like sitting in it. I feel like you're talking to me. Like, I feel like I'm sitting and watching a YouTube video and I'm like getting encouragement from it. And I'm like, wow, I needed to hear this because, even with my TBI, like, I still struggle to see myself as capable because every day looks different and the setbacks can be very intense. The fatigue can be very intense. I had long COVID as of last year, and it really messed me up. Like looking back, and I talked to my doctor and he said, yeah, like that can be a type of acquired brain injury.
Yep.
And based on how it presented with me, that's exactly what happened. It was a re-injury basically. And I wasn't expecting it because I didn't fall and hit my head. Right? So it was like I was just like, why? I can't do anything. Like I couldn't use my right hand for 4 months because it attacked my like nervous system, and my right side was already like weaker and struggling from the brain injury. And so the way it was described to me was like COVID just attacks whatever's already weak and already there. And for
Mm.
some people, it turns into like this long haul situation. And that's what happened for me. And so I've been living with brain injury for half my life. And now, I've worked so hard to overcome these things. And then a setback comes that's unexpected. And now it's like I defined myself as somebody who'd worked my way through brain injury. And now I'm having a podcast about it. And then it's like, I don't even have enough symptoms I can't even control like my day to day. I can't even get the episodes out that I want to get out, and like just getting so overwhelmed. And so, and when I really sit and look at myself and I really sit and think about how I think about myself, it's like I do define myself by what I can do whether I realize it or not. Right.
Mm.
And so it's like, how do we change the language and the way? And I was thinking specifically as you were talking, I have been, well, this isn't an official announcement, but I've been working on a book for a while.
Awesome.
And I have felt so inadequate that like I can't get my brain together to like work on it. And I thought, and you said like, you know, the power of the words. And I thought to myself, kind of as you were speaking, maybe I should just write on a post-it note like I am an author, and just like put it up on my desk and like tell myself that's who I am, right? Like, that like I've already written a book in 2017. I wrote a devotional book. It wasn't the type of book I'm trying to write now, but like I have already written things, right? So it's like, why do I constantly tell myself that I can't?
Mm.
So I don't know. That was a little segue, but or what, segue is not the right word. Tangent, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Word finding is not always a thing. For being a podcaster, I do not do great with words.
I think you're amazing. And I really, really love what you just shared. And thank you for sharing it. I like, again, it's so real, it's so raw, and it's so human. I think that's something like, if nothing else, we can remind ourselves we're human. We're having a human experience. And that includes the good and the bad and the ugly, right? Like it's all part of it. And the fact that you are podcasting, like your journey's not done. You're not like, okay, and here it is, and that's what it was. Like you're continuing on. And so, and that again is going to have those ups and downs. And I think it's honestly like so inspiring that you're moving forward through it and sharing your experience with it. And sometimes that may mean you take a pause. And like, again, that's a human experience to have. And it's really helpful, I think, for everybody to hear that and to see it and to know it. Like, it's validating, and it's also like, it's just so real. So I think I love that you shared that. And I do feel like it's so important just to let people know, like, we're all humans. If nothing
Yeah.
else, we can get to that. Like, I am human, which means
Mm-hmm.
good and bad, like hard and beautiful. Like all of it is
Yeah.
part of this experience. It's 50-50, and we can't know the good without the bad, and vice versa, right? Like it is, there's opposition in all things, and that is what makes the light and the good so beautiful in contrast to the dark and the hard. And so I think it's okay. It's not only okay, it's like how it's supposed to be. And it's a beautiful thing when people share it in the middle of it, because
Yeah.
it's not like we're never at a point where we're just like, okay,
We
and
haven't
that was it.
arrived. Yeah, like we're
Exactly.
all on the journey.
Yes.
And it's so important to realize that your sense of self is kind of a journey, right? And so like For me, I think a lot about like, what am I aligning myself with? And I'm a Christian, right? My faith is, I'm very outspoken about my faith. My faith is very, very important to me. It's been a big part of my journey. In Hope Survives, like we lead we have a faith based support group and a brain injury Bible study group. Those options are available if people want them. We also just have brain injury support, that's not faith based. But like for me, I think like as a follower of Christ, I think like, how am I aligning myself to the truth? Like if the core of my identity and who I am, like I believe I was created by God. I believe that he has a plan and a purpose for my life that is good. I believe that, you know, like he is the light in the darkness, and every day I can choose to align myself with what I know to be true, right? Instead of believing the lies that come all the time that are like, you're not enough and like you're inadequate, and like, I'm constantly battling these negative self-talk. And something like for me is like the armor of God, which is a passage in Ephesians 6. It's like a reminder to like, every day, it says every day take up the armor. So realizing that we might need to reset every day, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like that's human and that's part of it. So for me, faith and the word and things like that are the biggest part that helps me connect with identity. That's very personal to me. But as we're getting ready to close here, do you have any suggestions for tools or strategies for people to connect with their identity post injury?
Yes, yes. I love what you just said, and I think that is key and so important. And I'm with you on that faith in Christ, that like aligning with that and that light is what makes a huge difference. But even if people are not Christian, like having a belief in a higher power, like trusting in that, and sometimes leaning on that when you can't believe it yourself, I think can be really helpful. Journaling, like doing a thought download, just like getting everything out on paper, you might discover more about yourself as you're doing that. And that can be a really powerful tool to connect with yourself and know who you are. You could even like Google getting to know you questions, and you can ask yourself those questions. If you're like, I don't even know who I am anymore, like spend some time with
Oh,
you.
I love that.
What was that?
I
The
never
Runaway
thought to do
Bride.
that. That's
Do you
so
remember that
funny.
movie? I don't know if you ever saw that movie.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Where he's like, you don't even know who you are, like figure out what kind of eggs you like. So she like spends some time like trying the different eggs, and you're like, this is what I like. It's just, I think, yeah, asking yourself those questions, getting like, and it's okay to go in as a blank page, be like, oh, I'm going to discover who I am, what I like, what is important to me.
Yeah, can I just say, on hopesurvives.org in our resource hub, we have some journaling prompts for survivors that I've actually created. We have a team that's helping with them, but those ones specifically I worked on. And we have journaling prompts on different themes, and we just released one that's journaling prompts for identity. So
Oh,
if that
awesome.
if that resonates with you, what Bethany's saying about like, I want to get to know myself and journal myself, we do actually have some journaling prompts available if you're not quite sure what to do there. So I wanted to
Oh, I
mention that.
love that. Yes, no, that's so good. Yes, definitely look into those. I think that's fantastic. And I think as you're doing that, just be really like genuinely curious and open. And if you don't know the answer, it's okay to leave it blank. like discovering yourself that way. I think seeking for gratitude, like trying to, like, we all know that what we focus on is what grows. We find what we're looking for. So looking for things to be grateful for, and trying to find the purpose in it. That's something that has been a theme that I've been talking to people, like those who felt like, okay, there's got to be a higher reason for this. How can I like use this to help others? Like they seem to be, it's still really, really hard, but there's that foundation of like, okay, there's reason behind it. And again, I think a lot of times that comes down to a faith as well, like that relying on the higher power, like there's a higher purpose, there's something to this and some good that can come of this. And maybe we don't see it right now, but trusting that there will be is huge, I think. And again, remembering it's okay to be different than you were before. Everyone's changing and evolving, and you're figuring it out. And I think just like accepting, like, which is so easy to say and hard to do, I think. But I found this quote the other day that I really loved, and it says, "We must be willing to let go of the life we planned so as to have the life that is waiting for us." And I think that's so beautiful. Like we think we have things figured out and it has to be this way or else we'll never be happy. And what if there's other ways? What if that's not true? What if there's a billion ways we can be happy and things that we can find and paths we could take that would allow us to find more light and healing and joy? So I think being open to that and accepting what is, there's an analogy that I really like where if you're asking, if you want to get somewhere and you put in your direction, put in the address you want to go to in GPS or ask Siri or whatever, like Siri doesn't berate you for being where you're at. She's not like, I can't believe that's where you are. It's like, you want to get there. Okay, well, where are you? Okay, now let's move forward from there. So I think that kind of like figuring out where you are and acknowledging it, understanding it is like the first step to being able to go where you want to go. So like give yourself the time and the space to figure out and know that it's okay to be where you are. I think is really, really important.
Right in the middle.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like we're in process. We're on the journey that's part of growing, not just as being human, but like also especially in the brain injury world. I've met other survivors that have come to me, whether at my speaking events or different things, and been like, well, Cristabelle, like you're sharing your story and you've done it so much and you've spoken at things, and it's like, yeah, but I don't feel like I'm on the other side of brain injury. Like, I'm trying to encourage people, right where you are is valid. You can share hope with others, even figuring it out yourself, being in the middle. Like there's something really beautiful and raw about being vulnerable, and there's something really, I think, compelling about being able to say, I don't have it all figured out, and I'm going to sit in this tension of the now and not yet and allow myself to feel this right now, right? And so part of the journey to identity is like, we will not know how our identity is going to shape and change over the years, but we can sit today and ask ourselves, like, who am I today? Who do I want to be tomorrow? Right? How can I step forward with grace for myself and allow myself to be in the process? I think that's so important. And thank you for that reminder.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's so beautiful. Thank you. Can I also share really quick some ideas of how families can help their survivors, like the loved ones?
Yes.
I don't know how much time we have, but if that's okay.
We're coming down to the end, but we do have a couple. We have like a minute or two. We have a couple, very briefly, if you could share. Yeah.
But I do think that if you're the loved one trying to help your loved one dealing with the brain injury and finding their identity and all of that, I think really the first step is, like what we were just saying, is to love and accept them as they are, which can be so hard because they're not who you expected them to be. They may not be the same, like they, again, it feels very disorienting. They may not seem to be the same person from day to day, like what they can do, what they can't do, whatever. But being with them and loving them and holding the space for them. I know that's like I don't know if that's a term that everybody understands, but it's like basically just allowing them the space to be who they need to be. and I know Mel Robbins has a book out. I listened to her podcast. I haven't read the book, but the whole idea of let them, like let them have the experience that they're having. Let them be angry and be mad or have an explosion, like, and do it, if you need to put boundaries to be safe or whatever, like that's okay. You can figure those things out. But giving them that space to have the experience that they're having and not thinking that they're doing it wrong or trying to change it for them. We all have to come to these things ourselves. And that doesn't mean just like hands off, like, okay, you figure you out. Like there is space, I think, for us offering help and like, offering to be the person that they talk to figure it out or whatever, like, having the conversations, like being curious about them, like getting to know them again, maybe asking them those get to know you questions. Like you can interact, but I think at the, like, also having at the core of like, okay, this is their experience and I'm having my experience, and it's okay for us to both have our experience of it, and we'll come together and I'll try to help them as I can, but it's okay for them to have the experience that they're having. Which seems so obvious, and like really honestly, like we think we have way more control over other people than we actually do. And like what their thoughts and experiences, like we think we can control that, and we really can't. But it really, like, it's astounding. As I've been like practicing this for myself in like other situations in life, I'm like, I'm gonna just let this person have their experience and not try to change it for them or jump in and like solve everything for them. Like, it's amazing. Like, how do I, focusing on myself, like, how do I want to show up? What do I need? What do I need to like do to be the wife, the mother, the friend in this situation that feels authentic and best, like my best self? What does that look like? And not worry about like trying to make them have a different experience than what they're having. It's pretty amazing. The changes, like that shift can make a big difference. I think too, again, that we talked before, but taking care of themselves, like getting like all the self-compassion and grace. It's okay to feel what you're feeling, get your needs met so that you're not resentful, and talking to someone, a therapist, a coach, writing things down, like getting your mental and emotional health taken care of is key. And yeah, and letting go of the idea that this person has to be a certain way for you to know them or love them or understand them. Like, really just trying to see them as they are and love them as they are. And that makes all the difference.
Thank you so much for sharing, Bethany. Do you have any final words of hope for our listeners?
I think just know that you're doing it right. Like, there's not a right or a wrong, like, okay, I just said you're doing it right, and I'm saying there's not a right and a wrong way, but there's not a right and a wrong way. So however you're doing it is right for you, and it's okay that it's messy and that you're figuring it out, and just know that these are seasons, and like every day can feel like a new season, and it's okay to be where you're at, and things, there's light and hope and goodness out there, and it will be there for you always. And whether you're able to access it in this moment or not, it's okay. Just know that it's there. And you're doing it right. And I'm so glad that you're seeking out help by listening to things like this, like that. I love it when people are like asking the questions, doing the things, like I'm like, oh, you're going to be fine. You're going to be good because you're putting in the effort to figure it out. So keep doing what you're doing, and really, you've got this. And you are worthy of all the love. You are good enough.
I love that. Thank you so much, Bethany, for coming on, for sharing. This was such an incredible conversation. If people want to get in touch with you, can you just share your website and some of ways that people could do that?
Yeah, absolutely. My website is theconcussioncoach.com. And with coaching, I love helping people with concussions and their caregivers navigate recovery and get control over their life again post-concussion. So that's kind of my passion. That's what I do with the coaching. But I have my podcast that you can listen to, which is the Concussion Coach podcast. I jump on my website and you can see all the things, just theconcussioncoach.com.
Sounds great. Thank you so much for coming today and for being part of this important conversation on identity. I know I was encouraged, you inspired me, and I'm excited to get to share this with everyone. So thank you again for being here.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thanks for tuning in to Hope Survives podcast. Make sure to subscribe and stay tuned, and would love for you to consider leaving us a rating or a review. Check out hopesurvives.org for more. We'll see you next time, and remember, there is always hope.